Well, so last week we discussed Abraham and Isaac, and for some reason this thing's off the side of the page. And a quick review of last week. We talked about the different readings. We talked about the Kierkegaardian reading and how that affects the way we look at it, and hopefully not the way we look at it, but that is a thing to consider. He emphasizes Abraham's blind obedience, rather than his faith to some degree. And Hebrews 11 explains that Abraham offered Isaac as a sacrifice, knowing full well that God would restore Isaac from the dead or in any other thing that happened. We used the words. There in no time did he ever think he wasn't coming back down the mountain with Isaac. When Abraham responds to first Isaac, and then the Lord's messenger, and then to God, he says, Hineni, which in English means, here I am. When Isaac questions Abraham about the preparations for the sacrifice, he doesn't mention the knife. According to the traditional understanding of the binding of Isaac occurs when Isaac is in his 30s, and that's definitely a thing to remember. After the angel stops Abraham from sacrificing Isaac, Abraham lifts up his eyes and sees the ram. The binding of Isaac should not be understood as only a test of Abraham, but many other things. We talked about a type of Christ being shown, different important things there. Abraham names the place of the sacrifice Yahweh Yireh, which means on the mount of the Lord there is sight. And we didn't technically go into this, but one thing that I always feel is very important to know is that site, the exact place where that rock is, where that altar is still a known place. It is in Jerusalem. It is on top of where the Temple Mount is. It's called the Dome of the Rock. There's a building on top of that rock where Abraham sacrificed Isaac. It is that is still a place. It's just as normal as Rome, Georgia. But sometimes when we look at it, we think of it as, on this mystical mountain, and all these things. But it's an actual place where actual people have been going to that altar to pray and used as a holy place for centuries. When the servant first encounters Rebekah at the well, the narrative shows it's a type of betrothal scene. We talked about different type scenes that are how important they are in biblical literature. And from the beginning of their relationship, Isaac is shown as a passive character, where Rebekah is shown as the opposite, crossfire hurricane, or whatever you want to say. She's definitely very active, to say the least. Reminds me of Tara myself. She's the passive. I'm the go-getter. Anyway. Yeah. Crystal, I don't know why you're laughing so much, but anyway, I don't know what's so funny there. Anyway. Today we're going to talk about sibling rivalries, and that's a good. There's a lot of. We can all relate to that in some way, probably. Some famous siblings that had somewhat rivalries would be like Prince William and Prince Henry. That's a current one. Old school would be like I don't know if you guys know the Boleyns, but Mary and Anne Boleyn. That's probably one of the most famous ones. And of course, then you have Larry and Barry Alford. So those three would be the most important. I went over.
I've been very excited about that.
Yeah, I've been saving that joke all week. I was like sibling rivalries. I got one there. Okay. So, wait till I get this one out. Okay. So,
Wes, I have one.
Yes.
Raymond, and I can't think of Raymond's brother on Everyone Loves Raymond.
the big guy. What's it? Robert?
His name?
That's his name? Okay. Points for Brad.
My brother used to always call me Raymond, and I called him Raymond.
Oh.
Because,
You were arguing over which one was that character?
Yeah.
Yes.
He
That's
said,
pretty good.
What does Raymond want for dinner?
Oh.
Uh-huh. He was Raymond, and he said I was.
My brother and I were similar to that, except for I would just refer to him as the favorite.
Okay,
What does the favorite want for dinner? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My mom wouldn't even ask me, She would just say, what do you want, It's like, gruel for me again. Anyway, okay. Moving on. Oh. A funny thing is Tara always feels as if I'm exaggerating all my stories of my childhood. No matter what the story is, she feels as if I'm exaggerating it. I don't think that's very true, but anyway, moving on. Jacob and Esau, the sibling rivalry of Jacob and Esau. We're gonna be moving kind of quick, but I just felt like there was so much to read that we're going to be doing quite a bit of reading today. I'll be reading, and I just feel like some of the words that are used in this translation. We're using a Hebrew translation. Robert Alter made his own translation from the Hebrew into English, and I'll be using that. And for you to look along in your Bible at the same time. It kind of, the words he uses are just so much different for me. It brings different emphasis, and we'll talk about those kind of things as we go on. But so, in order to understand where the rivalry begins, we have to start with their conception, because it begins before they're even brothers, even before they're going after one another's throats. It begins in the womb. So in chapter 25, we'll start in verse 21. And Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife, for she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea. And Rebekah his wife conceived, and the children clashed together within her. And she said, "Then why me?" And she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations in your womb, two peoples from your loins shall issue. People over people shall prevail, the elder, the younger slave." And one of the things here, as I read through this, it has notes in there as well. And one of his notes lists how that last line, the elder, the younger slave, has always been a point of controversy in a way. The Hebrew syntax there, that's the use of the word, leaves it unclear which noun is the subject and which is the object. So the elder shall serve the younger, or the elder, the younger shall serve. So even like in their first description of their relationship, it's a little bit unclear historically. And so Jewish people for centuries have been discussing that. But even in that first sentence, there's a controversy and there's a struggle. And what are we going to find out? Who's going to come out on top? Verse 24 says, "And when her time was come to give birth, look, there were twins in her womb. And the first one came out ruddy, like a hairy mantle all over, and they called his name Esau. Then his brother came out, his hand grasping Esau's heel, and they called his name Jacob." Yaakov. Another translation is he who deceives. "And Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. And the lads grew up, and Esau was a man skilled in hunting, a man of the field. And Jacob was a simple man, a dweller in tents. And Isaac loved Esau for the game that he brought him, but Rebekah loved Jacob." So, right off, we're off on a terrible start. You can see the rivalry that these brothers have. It begins in the womb, and we can see that it extends out even to the parental favoritism as well. Jacob's name traditionally means heel grabber or supplanter, which, obviously, we see where the heel grabber comes from. We'll get to the rest in just a second. In verse 29 it says, "And Jacob prepared a stew, and Esau came from the field, and he was famished. And Esau said to Jacob, 'Let me gulp down some of this red stuff, for I am famished.' Therefore is his name called Edom. And Jacob said, 'Sell now your birthright to me.' And Esau said, 'Look, I am at the point of death, so why do I need a birthright?' And Jacob said, 'Swear it to me now.' And he swore to him. And he sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate, and he drank, and he rose, and he went off, and Esau spurned the birthright." So we'll stop there for a moment. I always try to be on Jacob's side, I feel like. He falls into all this in some way. And for me, this part right here, it's not as much deception, I think is a good way to look at it. I think the name of this in your Bibles, the label is probably the deception of Esau. But that's not really the way I look at this. And we'll see what you guys think about this. Do you really feel like Jacob is deceiving Esau here? The text really emphasizes Esau's worldly ways. He comes in from the field and he says, "I am famished." And Jacob says, "Sell me your birthright." So what does that mean, your birthright? Well, Esau's the firstborn. To him goes the inheritance. But with that inheritance, there comes great responsibility. He'll have his father's possessions. He'll So we see what Jacob's been thinking about all this time they're growing up. I kind of see it as like as soon as he has the opportunity, here he comes back with that, well, give me your birthright and I'll do that for you kind of line, It kind of comes out of the blue, the way he says it. Esau comes in from the field famished, and Jacob immediately, I want your birthright. He's been thinking about it, and Esau happily gives it up. He willfully gives it up. He even says, I'm at the point of death. And you wonder how exaggerated that is, how close was he to the point of death? Is he willing to give up his entire birthright for a bowl of this red stuff? The words there that he uses are very particular. Red is Edom, is the Hebrew word Edom. So that's that next line there when he talks about he's going to be named for this from this point on. He's using the word red. So it's kind of a, I don't know, not a joke on him, but kind of a slap at him, a little bit. So the idea of Jacob as the deceiver, I don't really see it here yet. Now, he's going to get there. But for me, this first, we can see that he's scheming, a little bit, but, he's looking for an opportunity. But I feel like there has to be some blame for Esau. In the rabbinic tradition, this is a great sin to give up the birthright, and especially for a bowl of soup. This would have been considered, for generations, his whole family would have been, looked down on. Verse 34, we'll listen to the flow of events. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate it, and he drank, and he rose, and he went off, and Esau spurned the birthright. It's so very immediate, all the actions are there. This is a man who's not thinking about his future. He's thinking about here and now. In chapter 27 is when we really start to see the rivalry and the way in how Jacob's going to become the deceiver. It comes to light here in verse 1. And it happened when Isaac was old that his eyes grew too bleary to see. And he called to Esau, his elder son, and said to him, my son. And he said, here I am. And that's the word Hineni again, my son. Hineni, here I am. My full being is here in your presence. And he said, look, I've grown old. I know not how soon I shall die. So now take up, pray, your gear and your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt me some game, and make me a dish of the kind that I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, so that I may solemnly bless you before I die. And Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to Esau his son. And Esau went off to the field to hunt game to bring. And Rebekah said to Jacob her son. So we notice Jacob her son. We've already discussed how Rebekah, she's active. She's very active, and it's just like in the betrothal scene. Her activities coming out here. She's already making things happen. And I like the words there where it mentions it's her son. And there's this favoritism that goes all the way through here. And one thing that we've already mentioned, I kind of skipped over, but the thing about Esau is, why is he Isaac's favorite? Because of the game that he brings him to some degree, or what type of person that is, but also that he's feeding him. I think that's important to remember. Look, I've heard your father speaking to Esau. This is Rebekah speaking to Jacob. Look, I've heard your father speaking to Esau, your brother, saying, bring me some game and make me a dish that I may eat, and I shall bless you in the Lord's presence before I die. So now, my son, listen to my voice. And we'll see that theme come up over and over again here. Listen to my voice. To what I command you, go, pray to the flock, and fetch me from there 2 choice kids that I may make them into a dish for your father of the kind he loves. And you shall bring it to your father, and he shall eat, and that he may bless you before he dies. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, look, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth-skinned man. What if my father feels me, and I seem a cheat to him, and bring on myself a curse and not a blessing? And his mother said, upon me your curse, my son. Just listen to my voice and go, fetch them for me. And here's the line from Jacob. He knows he's going to be deceptive. He doesn't know what that the Lord came to his mother and gave her this prophecy. He's simply doing what his mother says. And look at what he worries about. What if he feels me and I seem a cheat? Not that I am a cheat, but that I may seem a cheat to him. He knows something underhanded is going on here in the way he's trying to get his father's blessing. Surely there has to be some other way of getting his father's blessing. In verse 14 it says, "And he went and he fetched and he brought to his mother, and his mother made a dish of the kind his father loved. And Rebekah took the garments of Esau, her elder son, the finery that was with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the kids she put on his hands, and the smooth part of his neck. And she placed the dish and the bread she had made in the hand of Jacob, her son. And he came to his father and said, 'Father.' And he said, 'Hineni, here I am,' right in the presence of Jacob. 'Who are you, my son?'" And so for a moment there, we'll just think about what Jacob's doing here. In the presence of his father, whose eyes are bleary and he can't see. And he knows he's going to be deceptive. He's put on Esau's clothes and he's standing here before his father. And now he's got these goat skins draped across him. And I mean, for me, I don't know how fancy you can put on some goat skins, but man, these things he's looking a mess, to me. He's got it on his hands, he's got it on his neck. I guess maybe they thought maybe he could grab him by the neck, I don't know. It's a very odd scene. Like I just feel like he's just feeling so, man, I'm doing the wrong thing here, I would think. But not only that, but it's his father who says, "Hineni, here I am. And who are you, my son?" And he's saying, "Here I am, my son, before you in your presence." And Jacob says, "I am Esau, your firstborn." So even here, I like to argue a little bit. So I like to argue that Jacob, he's trying to hold back with the full deception. He's trying to give a little bit of true information. Why I'm on his side a little bit? Well, he does have the birthright, So he's got the birthright. So as he announces himself as the first son, in a way, roundabout way, she's not going for that. It's okay if you don't go for that. But he doesn't just say, "Here I am, I'm Esau," He says, "I'm Esau, your firstborn," since Esau's given him that birthright. And Jacob, for me, adds that last part so he's not so completely deceptive. Sometimes you do things wrong, but you add a little bit of something nice in there. Well, And Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you have spoken to me. Rise, pray, sit up, and eat of my game, so that you may solemnly bless me." And Isaac said to his son, "How is it you found this so soon, my son?" So he's already a little curious about what's going on. Even before he even, touches him, he's already curious. And he said, "Because the Lord, your God, gave me good luck." And of course, now we can ask, what does he mean by that? I suppose he can, he can mean, your Lord God gave me good luck. If he's pretending to be Esau, he didn't have to go way out in the field to get his game, Or perhaps he meant, I didn't have to go far. Or maybe he means, your Lord gave me good luck with Rebekah, my mother, on my side, doing these things for me, But no. And Isaac said to Jacob, "Come close, pray that I may feel you, my son, whether you are my son Esau or not." And in that, we see that he's not just curious. He is just like, we need to confirm this. He doubts that he's possibly being tricked here. And for me, I feel like the voice has everything to do with it. Just in the descriptions that we've already heard of the two people, one is this hunter. He's hairy. He's, all these things. And the other one's smooth-skinned. He's in here with his mom, cooking in the kitchen to some degree. They probably have different voices, So he realizes, voices can be changed, and he needs to feel, because his eyes are bleary. Verse 22, it says, "And Jacob came closer to Isaac his father, and he felt him, and he said, 'The voice is the voice of Jacob, and the hands are Esau's hands.' But he didn't recognize him, for his hands were like Esau's hands, hairy, and he blessed him. And he said, 'Are you my son Esau?' So now he cuts to the chase. He's just like right to it now. He's like, what are you doing with these goat skins on your arms? I just can't, he's just like got them wrapped around.
Goats do not feel like hairy arms.
Not at all. And man, Esau was very hairy to be feeling like a goat. He's a very hairy man.
You can't see like your other senses pick up. So
I agree.
like his hearing, he knew that was not Esau.
I just feel like the scene is like, yeah, it's me, Esau. Like that's the way I see him, I always like to associate most of the deceptive people in the Bible with people who have little pencil thin mustaches. Not a mustache like Brad's, but just like a little pencil thin one, like Gideon or Jacob. They got the little. So that when you think of him, that's him. He may even have it pulled up a little. No, that gives him away now. But he cuts to the chase there and he says, "Are you Esau?" And Jacob says, "I am." So now the full deception. There's no more taking up for him at this point. He's all in. And now we see the actual blessing itself is in verse 25. And he said, "Serve me that I may eat of the game of my son, so that I may solemnly bless you." And he served him and he ate, and he brought him wine and he drank. And Isaac his father said to him, "Come close, pray, and kiss me, my son." So the note all the repetitions of saying my son, my son. I myself imagine this whole scene is kind of like a heartbreaking scene for Jacob, in a way. He's going to get what he wants out of it, but man, he can't feel good about the way he's doing it. And he came close and he kissed him, and he smelled his garments and he blessed him, and he said, "See, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field that the Lord has blessed." And now we're going to take a look at what the actual blessing is, because I feel like the blessing itself, when you really break it down, is very revealing. "May God grant you from the dew of the heavens and the fat of the earth, an abundance of grain and drink. May people serve you and nations bow before you. Be overlord to your brothers. May your mother's sons bow before you. Those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you blessed." So now we'll think for a moment, what Jacob is witnessing here. We know that the favoritism has been, over the top, up to this point. Isaac loves Esau. He desires to bless him. Rebekah loves Jacob. So now we see what the blessing is. Jacob's disguising himself as Esau. Gets to see exactly what the father is willing to give Esau, his firstborn. He has to witness this. And what does he give him? Be overlord to your brothers. May your mother's sons bow before you. I see that as it's pretty shocking for Jacob, I think, to think that this is what his father's giving. And also, we'll see in a moment, he doesn't hold anything back to give Jacob. He gives it all. Everything's going to Esau. So you have to ask, what else is there, that he could bless Jacob with? In verse 30 it says, "And it happened as soon as Isaac finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob barely had left the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came back from the hunt. And he too had made a dish and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, 'Let my father rise and eat of the game of his son, so that you solemnly bless me.' And his father Isaac said, 'Who are you?' And he said, 'I am your son, your firstborn, Esau.'" And so now we see those words are reversed in the way he says it. "I am your son, your firstborn, Esau," as opposed to Jacob, who said, "I am Esau, your firstborn." There's a lot of that. As it goes on, you'll see that everything gets a little reversed there. In 33 it says, "And Isaac seized with a very great trembling. And he said, 'Who is it then who caught game and brought it to me? And I ate everything before you came and blessed him. Now blessed he stays. Where Esau heard his father's words, he cried out with a great and very bitter outcry. And he said to his father, "Bless me too, father." And he said, "Your brother has come in deceit and has taken your blessing." And Esau said, "Was his name called Jacob, that he should trip me now twice by the heels?" So first at birth, then second at the birthright. And remember, the heel imagery that they're using here is a struggle to get to be the firstborn. He's pulling at his heels. He's now saying, he's got me a second time in getting that birthright from me. He is trying to trip me up. My birthright he took, and look, now he's taken my blessing. And he said, "Have you not kept back a blessing from me?" And in some ways, Esau's hurt here, but at the same time as the reader, we understand that Isaac desired to heap all of it on Esau and leave nothing back for Jacob. 37 it says, "And Isaac answered and said to Esau, 'Look, I made him overlord to you, and all his brothers I gave him as slaves, and with grain and wine I endowed him. For you then, what can I do, my son? I can't give, a blessing that could contradict this first blessing. I've offered everything to him.' And Esau said to his father, 'Do you have but one blessing, my father? Perhaps you have a lesser blessing. Perhaps, what, and I don't know all the rules on these blessings, but man, it sounds like they're pretty strict, But, what is he asking? He's like, anything. Bless me with something, Father, Anything you have, may I please have a blessing from my father, Esau knows that he's Isaac's beloved son. They've had this relationship their whole lives, We watch all this and we think about how unfair all this is. A father favoring his son. There's this love and this bond between the two of them. And the son wants some sort of blessing from him. And Esau raised his voice and he wept. And Isaac, his father, answered and said to him, look, from the fat of the earth be your dwelling, and from the dew of the heavens above. So one thing we see there is that he reversed that. At the very in the blessing that he gives to Jacob, he says of the dew of the heavens and the fat of the earth. And so we see the reversals going on, and whatever this blessing is that he can give to Esau. And in 40 he says, by your sword shall you live, and your brother shall you serve. So you too are going to be a servant of Jacob. You will live by the sword. You'll be a military man, And when you rebel, you shall break off his yoke from your neck. Not if you rebel, but when you rebel. And we see, he will rebel, this man of the sword. So it's kind of like a prediction of violence to some degree, or so it seems. And you shall break off his yoke from your neck. So we'll pay attention to the word neck there because it comes back later on in the story. And Esau seethed with resentment against Jacob over the blessing his father had blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, as soon as the time for mourning my father comes around, I will kill Jacob, my brother. And here's the time of the sword, It comes out right there, right in the next verse. Here's the time when he's going to break the yoke from his neck. He'll have rebellion once his father dies. And Rebekah was told the words of Esau, her elder son. And she sent him and summoned Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, look, Esau your brother is consoling himself with the idea he will kill you. So now, my son, listen to my voice, and rise, flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and you may stay with him a while, until your brother's wrath subsides, until your brother's rage against you subsides, and forgets what you did to him. And I shall send and fetch you from there. So we'll skip over the whole time there where Jacob's with Laban. But I want to summarize it real quick in closing because I think it's very important to see, there will be a reconciliation between the brothers. We all know they're going to come back. They're separated by 20 years while Jacob is with Laban. And one of my favorite parts of this story is when you look at the story we just read, again with Jacob with Laban. You have the story of Rachel and Leah, which they have a sibling rivalry. It's the younger against the elder. Jacob is thrown into this rivalry. In fact, he's the very object of this rivalry. He loves Rachel the younger, and he's tricked by Laban in order to get him to marry Leah. So in Laban's house, which, for me, we see that as the house in which Rebekah is from. This is where all this came from. Where we met Rebekah in the first place is right there at Laban's house. So we can say, we see where, Rebekah's character and the way she deals with Isaac comes from. Jacob is tricked. He gives 20 years of service to Laban because he loves Rachel. He's tricked, and there's this wonderful reversal at night when he thinks he's been given Rachel in marriage. And he thinks he's going to bed with her in the dark. So his eyes are bleary. He's blind to some degree. And instead, he ends up consummating the relationship with the elder daughter. He's duped exactly the same way that Isaac is duped through this blindness itself. And he spends 20 years with these daughters. And that's where we'll pick up next week. Next week, Esau is going to return, and there's going to be a time for the two brothers to come back one more time. If you want to read ahead, Genesis 32 is where we'll pick up next week. But I just feel as if those two stories side by side are just they just work so well together because you have the deceiver and then he becomes the deceived. He does all this work and he tries to get these things.
And he's deceived.
And he is deceived, exactly. Yes, it is very, it's very interesting.
To me, it's so strange that there is such a, as a mother, like such a favoritism from both parents. I don't understand that really.
I can relate to that. No, just kidding. But no, I see what you're saying.
Weird.
For me, sometimes when I read it, I don't see. It's hard for me to see exactly what it is Esau's doing that's so bad. You know what I mean? Like he's, when the way it's read is, I guess I gotta
But
go.
if he's always out hunting, then she's gonna
Please
Think
do.
he's
spend more time with Jacob growing up, I guess.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That is true.
I think it's weird too, that's mentioned in the womb, it's almost as if this is the way it's intended to be and the way
Yes.
it's going to be.
Yes.
You know?
And they're told that.
Uh-huh.
They're told before she even gets pregnant. To some degree, that all this is going to happen. One interesting thing is, we see that Jacob, seeing that Esau wins their father's heart with food, tries to complete, this by preparing his own, offering. I think that the use of food in the story is pretty neat. But one of the things I was going to say about Esau, which we really have a hard time with in our English translations, I feel like, because sometimes they try to make it sound more pretty than this version, is he comes in and he's famished and he tries to gulp down some of this red stuff, and the way it's written right there, the language is very rough and it's fragments. It's not whole sentences, and it's showing him that he's like impulsive. And he makes all these decisions really quickly. Then in the morning he rises, he gets up and he goes out in the field and he leaves. And that's the way he lives his life to some degree, without planning or without preparation. And he's, you can have my birthright, whatever. I don't care about that. He's not thinking like he should. And it's hard for me to see that sometimes. I feel like Esau, man, he really gets a bad deal in all this, to some degree. But as we see all through Genesis, man, if you're supposed to be getting the birthright, you're probably not going to get it. Things aren't going to go your way. I mean, just saying, it doesn't really ever work out like that.
So when Isaac finds out, why couldn't he? You think, why couldn't he say, "Wait a second, I've been"?
That's the explanation of blessing is not done very well for me yet, and I can do some more research on that too. But like, the fact you can't
Take
take it back, man. Like, what if just like some stranger kid came in and he would have got the blessing and everything's his? It's very strange.
What was the thing like when you touched the thigh? Do you remember? I feel like that was somewhere close to this. Like if you touch someone's thigh, it means something.
That is a greeting. Is that what you're talking about?
A what?
A greeting?
I don't.
Or maybe
remember
that's an agreement. That's what that is. Where it's like that's like a sign of an agreement.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then you can't undo it.
Yes,
Right? So
yeah.
kind of.
So they had some weird
In
rules.
a way, it's almost like when you get married and you make a vow. You wouldn't, it's like that. It's that big of a deal to them.
Yeah,
That's why you couldn't undo it.
The exact opposite story where he's with Leah, the exact same thing, instead of Rachel, the one he loves. Once he consummates it, he's in.
He's exactly. So to
Yeah, he's
me,
stuck. Similar.
we
Like
think
lifting
more
the
about
veil
marriage
and
being
the
so
wife, the
official,
woman being different.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
but we don't think about
You're like,
birthrights.
whoa,
We don't
wait a minute.
Put that back there.
It's remarkable, I think, the more you study, especially Genesis. Genesis is so rich and there's so much stuff in there. How these two stories told back to back like that are so the same story. They are talking on the same points, and we see many times in Genesis. One of the ones for me is kind of when Abraham and Sarah, they go to the king and he's like, oh no, that's not my wife, that's my sister. That same storyline happens like 3 times. It's so strange, but it's to emphasize points to us.
It's like as the world turns for biblical
It is.
things.
Sometimes when I'm reading it, I'm like, this is like as the world turns. Yeah. But no, that's very good. Any other random thoughts or anything else?
You get a Bible version of the Spanish telenovela.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
And
And everybody's like,
Oh.
dun dun dun.
Until next week.
Well, who was that I just gave my blessing to? Dun dun dun. Yeah. Mhm.
Very dramatic
That works.
soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. But very good. Hopefully got some new perspectives on things. That's good. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. We'll do some